The person you once loved now feels like a complete stranger. The warmth in their eyes is gone. So are the unconditional words of care. You ask yourself, maybe this is just a rough patch, a storm that every love must weather. You search for reasons. You make excuses. You try to love a little harder, hoping to save something that once felt beautiful. But the more you try, the more exhausted you become, because deep down you're clinging to a love that no longer exists. The truth is, what you're experiencing isn't just a relationship conflict. You're in the middle of a narcissistic relationship, something no one taught you about in school, something society tends to avoid talking about, because no one wants to admit they once loved someone, incapable of loving them back. And if you've ever thought, maybe I'm just too sensitive, or maybe I'm asking for too much, then this video is for you. Not to blame them, but to help you stop blaming yourself. In this video, I'll walk you through 10 powerful and practical tactics, not to get revenge, but to reclaim your emotional freedom and the life that's rightfully yours. You won't need to yell. You won't need to teach them a lesson. All you need is to understand how they operate, and from there, quietly cut off the supply they've been draining from you day after day. If you've ever felt like you're living inside a manipulated dream, this is your wake-up call. Don't click away. Because at the end of this video, I'll share with you the most silent, yet most devastating blow a narcissist can ever receive. And if this video resonates with you and makes you feel less alone, hit that subscribe button, because your healing journey is only just beginning. 1. Tactic 1. Freezing technique against a narcissist. When you're forced to live with or frequently interact with a narcissist, there's one truth you must understand from the start. They're not looking for love. They're looking for control. They don't seek understanding, they demand submission. And one of the most powerful ways to strip them of their manipulative grip is by using the freezing technique, becoming emotionally unreadable. No reaction, no emotion, no revealing your thoughts. Refuse to play by their rules. This isn't about suppressing your feelings, it's about protecting yourself. Because the narcissist doesn't truly need you. They need your reactions. They feed off your anger, your tears, your explanations. The more you respond, the more emotional fuel you give them to prop up their distorted ego. When you go silent, their control begins to crack. If you still have to interact with them, keep communication to a bare minimum. Respond briefly and without emotion. Maintain a neutral facial expression, and avoid prolonged eye contact. Every small emotional cue is an invitation for manipulation. When they provoke you or pretend to show affection, respond as if you were speaking to a stranger, polite but emotionally distant. Never explain yourself. A narcissist doesn't want the truth. They want to twist it. Every justification you give becomes another trap. If they ask, "Why are you acting cold?" don't take the bait. Simply say, "I have nothing to say," and stay silent. When setting boundaries, be clear and firm without arguing. Say something like, "I'm not comfortable with that." If they ignore it, don't engage. Don't beg. Don't defend. Withdraw. Your lack of reaction is the harshest blow they'll receive. Using the freezing technique doesn't make you cruel. It makes you a survivor in a toxic environment. It's your emotional armor, your way to preserve energy for healing. And when you're strong enough, you'll leave that dynamic not with chaos, but with clarity. Because in the narcissist's world, the one who stays silent is the one who holds the real power. 2. Tactic 2. Secret financial independence. Silently taking back control from the narcissist. If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, you'll soon realize that control doesn't just come through words or emotions, it comes through money. They don't just manipulate your feelings, they manipulate your most basic needs: food, shelter, transportation, the clothes you wear, and the money in your account. And when you're financially dependent on them, you feel like you're trapped in a golden cage, shiny on the outside but mentally imprisoned. Narcissists are masters of financial control. They often hide assets, create secret accounts, cut off your access to funds, or even use your name to rack up debt and leave you to deal with the fallout. But the most subtle tactic is this. They make you feel guilty for even thinking about financial independence. They'll say things like, "We're a family. Why would we separate finances?" Or, "You're acting like you don't trust me." And you, out of guilt or fear of being labeled disloyal, surrender control over your financial life. That's the trap. The strategy of secret financial independence is not an act of betrayal. It's an act of survival. Because you can't leave if you have nothing to live on. You can't fight back if every dollar you spend must be approved. And you can't recover if leaving means drowning in debt and emptiness. So where do you begin? First, open a separate bank account. Don't use a joint one. Don't announce it. Don't leave traces. If you're under heavy surveillance or control, find alternative methods. Send money to a trusted friend. Stash cash in a safe place. Or use discrete financial apps that you alone control. Start transferring small amounts, even if it's just $5, $10, or $20 at a time. The amount doesn't matter. What matters is that you're creating your own exit route. Second, quietly build your own income stream. If possible, take on a side job, freelance work, or small business, anything that brings in income outside of their control. Don't tell the narcissist you want to be independent. They'll mock you, sabotage your efforts, or tighten the leash. Remember, independence is a threat to them. They're not afraid of your anger. They're afraid you won't need them anymore. Third, start collecting and securing important documents. IDs, financial statements, lease agreements, diplomas, proof of income, anything that could help you rebuild. Make copies and store them somewhere safe, preferably outside the shared living space. If possible, send digital versions to a trusted contact or store them in cloud storage with a protected password. Fourth, educate yourself on personal finance. Many victims of narcissistic abuse don't even know what assets they have, how much debt exists, or where the money goes each month. This is the blind spot narcissists exploit to keep you dependent. Start tracking expenses. Learn to read bank statements. Study your legal rights benefits insurance and what the law says about separation or asset division. Knowledge is your defense against chaos. You might think, but I'm not planning to leave yet. Why should I do all this? Because the moment you feel unprepared is the moment you need preparation the most. When the storm hits, there's no time to gather the pieces. And when the narcissist senses you're waking up, they'll tighten their grip emotionally and financially. If you don't have an escape plan, you might end up returning, not because of love, but because you can't survive alone. Financial freedom is not just about having money, it's about knowing you can live without asking for permission. It's the confidence you feel when you look at your own account and say, "I'm no longer trapped." And the best part? You don't need to announce it. You don't need to declare anything. You just prepare quietly, patiently, $1 at a time for the day you can walk away in peace. That's not betrayal, that's self-preservation. The narcissist will always try to convince you that you can't live without them. But when you hold financial freedom in your hands, you'll look at them differently, without fear, without neediness, only clarity. And that is the first crack in their illusion of control. 3. Tactic 3. Agree with the discard. When acceptance shocks the narcissist. It may sound counterintuitive, but one of the most powerful ways to reclaim your power over a narcissist is to agree with the discard. When they threaten to leave, go silent or emotionally detached to provoke fear. They're expecting one thing: that you'll beg, panic, and fight to keep them. They want to watch you suffer. They want full control of the goodbye, like a director scripting the final act of a play. But when you calmly say, "Okay, I agree," everything inside them collapses. Because you've just broken their script. They can't steer your emotions anymore. They've lost control. For a narcissist, being accepted is often their greatest fear because they don't want you to let go. They want you to keep reacting. When you accept the ending, you drain them of the energy they use to manipulate you. You're no longer the abandoned one. You're the one who chooses freedom. This will confuse and even enrage them. They may try to hoover you later, sending signals or bait to test if they still have a hold. But if you've truly awakened, you'll understand agreeing to walk away isn't defeat. It's the choice of someone who finally sees their own worth and no longer needs to be held on to by someone who never valued them. 4. Tactic 4. Tell no one about your plan to leave. True freedom begins with absolute silence. When you're planning to leave a narcissist, there is one critical rule you must follow. Don't tell anyone. Not your best friend, not a coworker, not even that one understanding relative. And above all, never tell the narcissist. In the journey to break free from manipulation and regain your life, some secrets must be kept until the very end. This is one of them. You may feel the urge to share, to seek validation, comfort, or simply hear someone say, "You're doing the right thing." That's a natural human desire, especially when you've been emotionally isolated for so long. But be careful. Narcissists are expert information gatherers. One misplaced comment, a forwarded text message, a screenshot, or an overheard phone call can unravel your entire escape plan. Leaving isn't a romantic gesture like in the movies. It's a mental and strategic campaign, one that requires every step to be hidden and calculated. Because the moment a narcissist senses you might leave, they will activate their emergency control mode. And when they do, all tactics come out: guilt trips, promises to change, threats, manipulation through children, even financial sabotage or violence. They don't just want to keep you, they want to own the way you leave. And the cruel part? They don't have to hear it from you. Hearing it from someone else is enough. That's why the more people you tell, the greater the risk of having your exit route destroyed. The people you trust might be well-meaning, but they can unintentionally leak information, or worse, they may be under the narcissist's influence. You must understand, isolation during the planning phase is not weakness, it's armor. So, practice silence. On the outside, let everything appear normal. Smile, go to work, be present. But internally, you are building something sacred and strong, saving money, gathering documents, arranging a place to go, preparing legally if needed. And all of it must be done quietly and without a trace. If you truly must talk to someone, choose carefully a trusted therapist, a lawyer, or a domestic abuse support organization. These professionals can help you plan your exit without endangering your safety. But aside from them, everyone else should only find out after you're gone. No warnings, no goodbye letters, no heartfelt explanations. A narcissist doesn't care about reasons, they care about reeling you back in. The more you reveal, the more they'll twist it to manipulate your emotions one last time. Walk away when you're ready, not when you're hoping for understanding. True freedom begins the moment you say to yourself, "I will not warn them. I will not plead. I will simply disappear in the silence of someone who has awakened." And that is the one thing a narcissist can never control: a mind that has quietly chosen freedom with resolve and without looking back. 5. Tactic 5. Do not play the role in the smear campaign. Refuse to be the villain in the narcissist's script. If you've ever left a narcissist or even just stopped allowing them to manipulate you, chances are you've become the target of something called a smear campaign. That's when they create a dramatic, dishonest narrative with one goal to make you look like the villain. They'll tell friends, family, coworkers, even strangers stories that paint them as the heartbroken victim, abandoned, betrayed, devastated, and you as the cold, cruel cause of it all. You might be accused of being emotionally abusive, unstable, selfish, violent, whatever fits their story. They'll twist facts, insert half-truths, and spin every detail to make themselves appear sympathetic and righteous. And worst of all, they often start this narrative before you even realize they're doing it. Naturally, your instinct will be to defend yourself, to correct the lies, explain your side, set the record straight. But that's the trap. Because the moment you react, you've stepped into their script. You've become a character in their drama. And no matter what you say, they'll twist it as further proof that you're unstable or defensive. The more you try to clarify, the deeper you get pulled into a game where the rules are rigged and you can't win. So what should you do? The strategy is simple. Don't react, reflect. Don't retaliate, demonstrate. Don't explain, live with grace. Let people see who you are through how you live, how you carry yourself, and how you treat others, not through long posts or heated arguments. Those who are discerning will notice. Those who were manipulated will eventually start to see the inconsistencies in the narcissist's story, because truth has a way of surfacing when you stay grounded in your values. Remember, narcissists don't care about truth. They care about controlling the narrative. When you remain calm and keep living in alignment with your integrity, you take that control away from them. They can't predict your moves, and they can't provoke the chaos they crave. Your silence becomes their confusion, and in that confusion, their mask begins to crack. Respond with kindness, but not submission. If someone comes to you and says, "I heard you did XYZ to them, is it true?" You don't need to argue. You can simply say they have their version of the story. I choose not to share mine. That one line spoken with calm will do more to raise questions than 1,000 defensive words ever could. In the narcissist's inner world, your anger is their triumph. Every time you defend yourself, explain yourself, or lose your composure, they feel like they've won. But when you refuse to play along, refuse to step onto their stage, refuse to join the drama, there's no scene to act out. And without an audience or a reaction, the performance falls apart. This isn't easy. Especially when your reputation, your dignity, and your relationships are being shaken by lies. You'll feel misunderstood, hurt, betrayed by people you thought were on your side. But don't forget, time is the most powerful truth teller. Stories built on lies eventually collapse. But steady character shown through consistent calm and kindness becomes the foundation on which your true self is rebuilt. Focus on healing. Direct your energy toward your future, not a war you never needed to fight. Live with clarity, and those who need to see the truth will. The people worth keeping in your life won't believe one-sided stories whispered in your absence, and those who do, they were never really yours. The smear campaign only works when you respond the way they expect, but when you don't react, you stop being the victim. You become someone who chooses silence not from weakness but from wisdom. And that silence, calm, intentional, and grounded, becomes your loudest and most powerful response. 6. Tactic 6. Leave no open loopholes in legal documents. When you're in the process of leaving a narcissist, especially in the context of marriage, business, custody, or any legal entanglement, there is one truth you must never forget. They will use the law as a weapon if given the chance. For most people, legal documents are just formalities. But for a narcissist, they're tools to manipulate delay and prolong your suffering. That's why you must leave no open doors in any legal paperwork. No vague language. No, we'll revisit this later. No clauses like subject to future negotiation to be decided by both parties later or temporary arrangement with shared decision-making. These phrases may sound harmless, but to a narcissist, they're bait. A loophole is a lifeline for continued control even after you've physically walked away. A narcissist doesn't let go. They'll find any excuse to come back to create conflict, to regain access not out of love, but out of a need to dominate. They'll exploit any ambiguity in your documents to file countersuits, delay final decisions, manipulate shared responsibilities, or use flimsy excuses to contact you and emotionally destabilize you once more. So if you're preparing for separation, divorce, asset division, ending a business partnership or custody arrangements, make sure every agreement is airtight, final, and legally binding. Every clause should have a clear time frame, defined responsibilities, and zero room for subjective interpretation. Don't allow joint decisions. Later, you already know they don't act in good faith. If possible, work with a lawyer who understands not just the legal process, but also the psychology of emotional manipulation. Ask them directly, is there anything in here that could be used against me later? If there is, remove or revise it. This is not the time to be polite or optimistic. With a narcissist, good faith is simply another stage for performance. If you're required to sign anything involving the narcissist, make sure everything is in writing. No verbal agreements, no handshake deals, no assumptions. Every commitment needs documented proof. If necessary, request a witness or third-party presence. Protect the version of you who will exist months or years from now, the version who will be grateful you left no weak links behind. And most importantly, don't confuse kindness with vulnerability. Giving up legal rights just to avoid conflict only shows them you're still afraid. Narcissists don't respect compromise, they exploit it. When you are firm, precise, and emotionally detached on paper, you are reclaiming your power both legally and psychologically. An ending must be final. No renegotiations, no friendly follow-ups, no cycles. Because true freedom doesn't begin with hope. It begins with a closed door they cannot reopen. 7. Tactic 7. Set personal boundaries and commit to honoring them yourself. In a relationship with a narcissist, personal boundaries are usually the first thing to be crossed, and eventually the first thing you give up. They creep in slowly, controlling your time, interfering in your relationships, invading your emotional space, pressuring you to act against your values. Every time you compromise, they push further until you no longer know who you are, what you want, or where your limits lie. That's why setting personal boundaries is one of the most powerful steps toward breaking free from control and reclaiming your identity. But it's not enough to just set them. You must also honor and protect those boundaries even when it's uncomfortable, even when it makes you feel guilty, alone, or misunderstood. Boundaries are not punishment. They are a declaration: I have the right to peace. I have the right to say no. I have the right to be free from control. And the narcissist who thrives on crossing boundaries will not let that happen without resistance. When you start building walls, they will try everything to tear them down, accuse you of being selfish, call you cold, guilt-trip you with tears, or pretend they've changed just to get back in. But you must stand firm. If you say, I won't answer the phone after 9 p.m., then don't answer. If you say, I won't meet with them alone anymore, then don't let nostalgia or pity weaken your resolve. Every time you break your own boundary, you send yourself the message, I'm not worth protecting, and the narcissist will gladly exploit that opening. Your boundaries don't need their approval to be valid. They only need your enforcement. You don't need permission to maintain distance. You don't need to justify choosing to stay away from toxicity. And you certainly don't need to negotiate your emotional freedom. Start small, limit time, limit communication, limit access to your personal life. Write your boundaries down. Repeat them to yourself daily. When someone crosses a line, whether intentionally or not, respond clearly, calmly, and firmly. This goes beyond the boundary I've set. I'm not comfortable, and if they continue, don't argue. Withdraw. Remember, no one gets to label you the bad one just because you protect yourself. Saying no isn't unkind. Guarding your peace is your responsibility. You are no longer living to please others, you're living to be honest with yourself. Setting boundaries is the act of someone relearning how to love themselves after being emotionally distorted by manipulation. It is your invisible shield where guilt tactics, emotional games, and control attempts lose their power. When you respect your own limits, you're not just protecting the present, you're rebuilding a future founded on clarity, strength, and self-respect. 8. Tactic. 8. Stay connected to family and friends, your quiet but powerful lifeline during narcissistic abuse. One of the most dangerous strategies a narcissist uses to control you is this. They isolate you from everyone else. And they don't do it through force. They do it through emotional manipulation, sweet-sounding jealousy, subtle concern, backhanded compliments, or carefully planted guilt. They convince you that your friends are bad influences, that your family doesn't really understand, that spending time away from them is selfish. And slowly, almost without noticing, you begin to withdraw. You cancel plans, you skip gatherings, and eventually your world shrinks down to one person, them. Once that happens, you have no mirror left to reflect what's real. No one to validate your feelings, to question what's happening, to remind you of who you used to be. That's when manipulation becomes most effective. When you are emotionally isolated, your perception can be bent, broken, and reshaped into whatever the narcissist wants it to be. That's why one of the most important survival strategies in a toxic relationship is this: stay connected to your family, your friends, and anyone who truly cares about your well-being. You don't need to tell them everything. You don't need to expose the narcissist right away. What matters is that you don't allow yourself to be cut off from the outside world, because that world is your safety net, your reality check, and your emotional anchor when everything else is being distorted. Staying connected doesn't require big gestures. Sometimes a simple phone call, a text message, a quick coffee catch-up, that's all it takes to remind yourself I'm not alone. There's life outside of this control. There's love that isn't built on fear, guilt, or domination. The narcissist won't like it when they see you maintaining outside relationships. They might call you selfish, say you're not committed enough, or accuse your friends and family of turning you against them. They'll use guilt. I miss you when you're gone. Why didn't you tell me you were meeting them? Or they'll create distrust. I don't think that person is really your friend. They're just using you. If you react, they'll escalate. If you hesitate, they'll push further. And before long, your inner circle becomes silent, not because they left, but because you stopped reaching out. So stay alert. Protect your connections like you're protecting your sanity, because in many ways, you are. Even if those relationships have grown distant, consider rebuilding them. Keep at least a few close friends, ones who listen, who don't judge, who remind you of your worth. By staying connected, you create a mirror to reality. What you've normalized in the relationship, the pain, the gaslighting, the control, becomes clearer when spoken aloud to someone else. You might hear your own words and suddenly realize, that's not okay. I deserve better. That is the beginning of your healing, the return of your internal compass, which the narcissist tried so hard to erase. And if you decide to leave, this network of family and friends becomes your survival team. They can hold on to important documents, provide temporary shelter, help with legal advice, or simply sit with you in silence when you need to cry. Never underestimate the power of a hug. A gentle, "I believe you," or the feeling of safety in another's presence. In the chaos of narcissistic manipulation, these small things are everything. Your support system also protects you from falling into one of the most common traps after leaving going back because there's no one else. Loneliness can blur your memory. It can make you forget why you left in the first place. But when you have someone to talk to, someone who listens without judgment, you remember. You stay grounded. You keep moving forward. Do this even if you feel ashamed or afraid of being judged. The people who love you don't expect perfection. They just want you to be honest with yourself and brave enough to find your way back to the light. And if someone walks away from you because you once fell into a toxic relationship, that person was never meant to stay. Don't let isolation destroy you quietly. Keep the doors open. Keep a path to safety. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and going back to the person who hurt you is one message from an old friend that says, "Hey, are you okay?" 9. Tactic 9. Don't wait for an apology. Narcissists don't apologize, they rewrite the story. One of the reasons people stay trapped in relationships with narcissists far longer than they should is because of the hope for a genuine apology. You may think, surely they'll realize they were wrong. One day they'll see the pain they caused. And so you wait. You wait for a moment of clarity, a sincere acknowledgement, an apology that feels real and redemptive. But with a narcissist, admitting fault is almost impossible because it means relinquishing power, and they would rather lose everything than give up being right. Instead of apologizing, they rewrite the story. They distort facts. They flip the script. They cast themselves as the victim and you as the betrayer, the unstable one, the overly sensitive problem. When you ask for an apology, they may smirk. Or calmly say, "You really have issues." Worse, they may offer a fake apology, an empty, manipulative line designed to reel you back in. "If you felt hurt, then I'm sorry." That's not accountability, that's invalidation dressed as empathy. Don't take the bait. What you truly need is not an apology from their mouth, but release from your need for their recognition. You don't need validation from the person who hurt you. You don't need them to get it, because if they were capable of that kind of emotional awareness, they wouldn't have caused the harm in the first place. Make no mistake, they understand. They just don't care. Forgiveness. If you choose, it doesn't have to begin with an apology. Sometimes forgiveness means telling yourself, "I release the expectation that they'll ever fix what they broke." Because waiting for an apology from someone who doesn't believe they did anything wrong is like waiting for water in a desert. It only drains you more. The truth is, narcissists don't reflect on the emotional consequences of their actions. In their world, everything is someone else's fault. They will deflect, justify, blame, or completely ignore, but they won't look inward. And if you stay hoping for the day, they'll finally understand you're giving them permission to keep delaying your healing. You don't have to play the role of the forgiving one just to prove you're a good person. What you need is to take back the energy you gave to someone who didn't value it and reinvest that into yourself. Write down what hurt you. Acknowledge the betrayal, the hope you once carried, the dreams that never came. And then offer yourself what you once begged from them: comfort, compassion, and the truth that you deserve better. Don't wait for an apology. Become the healing you were waiting for. 10. Tactic 10. Live well without them. Because true healing begins when you stop needing an audience. After leaving a narcissist, one of the hardest emotional traps many survivors fall into isn't missing them. It's fearing that they'll never see your healing. You might think, "I'll thrive, so they regret losing me." I'll succeed so they know what they gave up. You find yourself waiting for that moment when they look back with remorse, as if your recovery only matters if they witness it. But the truth is they don't care. And if you're living to prove something to them, you're still living under their shadow. Your choices, your energy, your future still orbit around someone who broke you. The narcissist may never regret anything. They might keep smearing your name, twisting the truth, or pretending you never mattered. They might never look back, and that does not diminish your worth. Healing isn't a performance. Healing is a quiet revolution that happens deep within. It's waking up one morning and realizing you haven't thought about them in weeks. It's smiling without needing a reason. It's building a life that no longer centers around proving a point, but simply because you deserve to live well. A narcissist won't celebrate your growth. They won't be happy to see you thriving. If anything, they'll try to hoover you back with lines like, "I realize now how wrong I was," or "You're the only one who truly understood me." But you already know those words aren't about you. They're about their fear of losing control over someone who no longer needs them. So live fully, freely, joyfully, without needing their approval, their applause, or their attention. Living well isn't about making someone else regret. It's about being able to look in the mirror and say, "I've come home to myself." You don't need an audience to validate your healing. You don't need acknowledgement from the one who tried to break you. Your light doesn't have to shine for anyone else. It only needs to be bright enough to warm yourself. That is freedom. That is power. And that is your real victory. When you walk away from a narcissist, you're not just leaving a person, you're leaving a cycle. A cycle of emotional highs and lows, of craving and rejection, of false hope and quiet devastation. You're walking away from a version of yourself that bent, broke, and shrank just to keep the connection alive. And the truth is, even when you know the relationship was toxic, part of you may still feel hollow, conflicted, even guilty, as if you abandoned something that could have been different. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. A human who once loved deeply. A human who once believed in change. A human who hoped for something real. But then something inside you begins to awaken. Real love should never require you to lose yourself. No one who truly loves you will demand that you silence your voice, dull your shine, or sacrifice your peace to keep them happy. And no one deserves to be called difficult or too emotional just because they asked for respect. So you take your first steps slowly, quietly, unsure. Each step feels like a battle. Am I overreacting? Will anyone understand what I went through? Will they regret losing me? And then one day, it happens. Not that they come back, but you do. You come back to the version of you that smiles without fear. The one that feels joy sipping morning coffee, reading a book, laughing with a friend. You return to yourself, not the version they wanted you to be, but the one who existed before the manipulation ever began. You learn to live without an apology. You learn to forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You learn to build boundaries not to push people away, but to protect the fragile sense of self you've worked so hard to rebuild. And perhaps the most powerful transformation of all, you learn to thrive without needing them to see it. You stop living for their regret. You stop waiting for their remorse. Because you finally understand they were never meant to be the center of your healing. You don't need them to look back. You don't need them to miss you. You just need you, the version of you that had the courage to walk away, the strength to stay gone, and the will to rebuild from ruin. True freedom doesn't begin the day the narcissist walks out. It begins the moment you stop hoping they'll come back to fix what they broke. It begins the moment you realize some people only come into your life to teach you who not to become and to remind you of everything you truly deserve. You don't need to be perfect after abuse. You just need to be honest with yourself. Maybe you still tremble. Maybe you still hurt. Maybe the nights are long and the grief comes in waves. But if you're still waking up, still choosing life, still trying to understand what happened, then that's power. That's resilience. That's you reclaiming your life piece by piece, breath by breath. No one can take that from you now. No manipulator can reach the part of you that has finally chosen silence over chaos, self-worth over validation, peace over performance. And if you're reading this now, you're already on the edge of something new. Maybe you've left. Maybe you're still deciding. But know this with certainty. You are not alone. You are seen. You are understood. And you are worthy of a life that doesn't revolve around fear, guilt, or emotional games disguised as love. Keep walking. Even if it's slow. Even if it hurts. Even if you stumble. Because every step you take away from them is a step closer to yourself. And on the other side of that pain is freedom, is healing, is love not from them, but from you. And that is something no one can ever take away again.